The American Colonization Society, originally known as the American Society for Colonizing the Free People of Color of the United States, was founded in 1816 by a group of wealthy white men, including Reverend Robert Finley, Charles Fenton Mercer, Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, Bushrod Washington, Elias Gladwell, and Francis Scott Key. The members of the American Colonization Society ironically consisted of abolitionists and enslavers because they both agreed that free black people weren't able to be accepted as equals in the United States. Both abolitionists and enslavers felt that they benefited from the society because it was an opportunity for African Americans to escape racism and start new lives, and it also removed the challenge that integration placed on white people. The society was officially established at the Davis Hotel in Washington, D.C. The main members were from Virginia and Kentucky.
The American Colonization Society failed as a whole due to many different factors. These factors include things such as opposition from outside forces, funding issues, and other issues that had to do with the country of Liberia after its formation. To begin with, many abolitionists during this time advocated for the emancipation and integration of slaves within society, which opposed the ideas of the ACS as they wished to send freed slaves to Africa instead of integrating them into American society. This led to opposition from abolitionists as they saw this as a way for the ACS to perpetuate slavery by removing free slaves from the United States. On top of the opposition from abolitionists, the ACS struggled with financial stability and other financial difficulties, which caused the creation of a sustainable Liberian settlement to be very difficult, as insufficient funds hindered the ability to build necessary infrastructure and support for settlers. Most of these financial struggles were caused by a lack of support from the government and politicians who felt that money and resources should be used on more pressing issues within the United States rather than issues in Africa. Finally, one of the largest reasons the movement and ACS as a whole, the American Colonization Society, could be seen as a failure is because of the way that the country of Liberia turned out. The relocation of new peoples into a previously uncolonized territory caused major uprisings and resistance from local indigenous populations, which ultimately led Liberia into constant conflict for the next 150 years. After reviewing all of this information, it is clear that the American Colonization Society failed.
The American Colonization Society faced opposition from various people. A lot of this came from white abolitionists. There was also plenty from the actual black people affected. Of course, in that time, the white abolitionists had more of a say there. And also people who were pro-slavery, when the cotton boom hit, they weren't just gonna be okay with their slaves getting sent away. So they were pretty upset about that. They didn't want to just lose all of that. There's funding issues. They faced opposition because a lot of the free black people already had considered themselves Americans at this point because their families had already been in the States for generations, or they were just born there. It's not like these people had just come from Africa and were going back. They were Americans, so they didn't want to do that.
The American Colonization Society was an organization that was created in 1816 to transport free African American slaves to Africa as an alternative to emancipation in American society. All the supporters of the American Colonization Society generally agreed that the freed African American slaves could not integrate into white society, therefore their plan was to send them to Africa. The people of the American Colonization Society purchased and freed slaves from America and paid for their trip to Africa. The location that was used to transport the freed enslaved people to was Liberia. It was believed that due to racism by white Americans, the previously enslaved African Americans could not integrate into white American society. Therefore, the supporters of the American Colonization Society wanted to send them back to Africa to establish their own new society. The American Colonization Society believed that slaveholders would be more likely to voluntarily emancipate their slaves if they knew they would be sent to Africa and would not stay in America.